It's not primarily a sexual need, physically sexual need, but it's an emotional need. And the emotional need is built in by God in a human being's nature. And I think probably the reason there are fewer women, lesbians, in this is that women tend to be closer, I think, to their children than men do. And the need of young girls is more readily, more often fulfilled. And so the lesbian population is smaller in comparison to the male homosexual population. The first thing you deal with is not the physical sex. That's not the part. You look for what is it that the person is really seeking. And in every sin, there's something positive the person's seeking, and then there's something negative, which is destructive. And the important thing is to find out what is the positive drive in this. What are they looking for that God would want to fulfill, because He's put that desire for male companionship and for a father. He's put that in us, and that needs to be fulfilled in us. And in our society, often is not fulfilled. The father is absent. He's probably a loving father trying to make ends meet with 2 jobs. I put food on the table for my family. I love them. But the son doesn't feel it. I find, now I'm 80 years old, and I find that often we misperceive other people's motivations. They do something and you think that they did it out of malice or whatever. I find that's common in human nature, that we tend to see the negative more easily than we see the positive. If you haven't bonded with your dad and he's passed away, what we find, and this is amazing, that at some point in the prayer you can bring, it sounds, for people who haven't experienced this, like a pie in the sky, but it isn't. But I often pray that Jesus, through His risen humanity, which includes, He was a human being like us in everything except sin, and that Jesus in His humanity can restore to this man something in his humanity that was missing. And we find in prayer that often we let Jesus take over the prayer, that often amazing things take place, like suddenly he's a young man again in his teens, and Jesus appears and takes him fishing, and they go fishing. Now you don't think of making up a prayer asking Jesus to go fishing with this 40-year-old man, but these things happen. Jesus has a deep love of our humanity and who we are as human beings. Sometimes God the Father appears. This is another. Now, how does God the Father appear? It's because he's not an old man with a beard, but the presence of God as Father, not pictorial. It sometimes happens. It's just amazing what God can do. Now, it often takes a period of time. It often doesn't happen at once. And I would estimate, ideally, that it may take 6 months. And it's different for each person. And you don't start with the sexual thing, usually, just saying no. And I've seen this happen where the person, as they're being healed, maybe they're in a relationship, a sexual relationship, and have been for a long time. And there's a lot of good in it, and evil. Most of our lives there's a mixture, and we want to get the good totally. And the person says, well, I can't really leave the other person yet because it would destroy them, or they'll say something like that. And then maybe a month later, the person in the dream would get the word that they should leave, and they find that the other person's gotten that too. And this peacefully they part company.